Hello, I'm Hope Logan. I am an actor on Bold and the Beautiful, and many people really love both me and our Bold and the Beautiful drama. So I've come here to share updates about my beloved Bold and the Beautiful. Everyone, please subscribe and support me. If you do, I will keep coming every day with new updates for you. The Bold and the Beautiful has left Deacon Sharp facing a painful reality he never expected. And after putting his heart on the line for Taylor Hayes, he may now be wondering whether he made the biggest mistake of his life. Deacon got down on one knee and asked Taylor to become his wife, fully believing that the woman he loved would say yes and that they were finally ready to take the next step together. Instead, Taylor gently but firmly turned him down, and although she made it clear that her rejection was not because she stopped loving him, the damage was already done. For Deacon, this was not simply a failed proposal, it was a crushing realization that the future he had imagined with Taylor might not be the future she wants at all. Now, with his emotions raw and his confidence shaken, Deacon could find himself looking back at everything he gave up to be with Taylor, including his marriage to Sheila Carter, and wondering whether walking away from Sheila was truly the right decision. When Deacon proposed, he seemed convinced that Taylor would accept because, from his perspective, their relationship had reached a place where marriage felt like the natural next chapter. But Taylor saw things completely differently, insisting that she loves what they already have and sees no reason to change it by bringing a wedding into the equation. She pointed out that they are older now, that both of them have already experienced marriage and divorce, and that perhaps they no longer need a ceremony or a legal commitment to prove what they mean to one another. More importantly, Taylor admitted that she fears marriage could actually damage their relationship instead of strengthening it, and that fear appears to be powerful enough to outweigh Deacon's desire to make their commitment permanent. Yet beneath all of those explanations, Deacon may be left wondering whether Taylor is simply searching for reasons not to say yes. Because when someone truly wants the same future you do, it is difficult not to question why they keep finding reasons to hold back. Taylor also brought up the complications surrounding Steffi Forster and Sheila, suggesting that those two women make marriage even more complicated than it already is. But from Deacon's perspective, that argument may not make much sense anymore because Sheila has already given him the divorce he wanted and has largely stepped away from his relationship with Taylor. At this point, Sheila's attention is focused elsewhere, particularly on maintaining her relationship with Finnegan and spending time with her grandson Hayes, rather than interfering with Deacon and Taylor. Of course, the situation surrounding Sheila, Finn, and Steffi remains explosive, and the tension between those characters is nowhere near settled. But Sheila herself has not been actively trying to destroy Deacon and Taylor's relationship. She agreed to let Deacon go, even though doing so clearly hurt her deeply, and she has allowed him and Taylor to live their lives without constantly standing over them. So when Taylor uses Sheila as part of the reason she cannot take the next step with Deacon, he may begin to wonder whether Sheila is really the problem or whether Taylor's own fears are what stand between them. Then there is Steffi, who has largely come to accept her mother's relationship with Deacon, even if she may never be completely comfortable with it. Certainly hearing that Taylor and Deacon were engaged would probably come as a shock, especially given Deacon's history and Sheila's connection to the family. But Steffi would likely come around eventually if she saw that her mother was genuinely happy. That makes Taylor's refusal even more difficult for Deacon to understand. From where he is standing, it can feel as though Taylor is gathering every possible complication and using them as a reason to avoid marriage, even though none of those obstacles appear impossible to overcome. Deacon tried to reassure her that marriage was not essential as long as they could remain together, but that reassurance could not hide the heartbreak on his face. He had taken an enormous emotional risk by asking her, and when she said no, he was left staring at a future that suddenly looked very different from the one he had imagined. That is why Deacon's question about whether he made a mistake by divorcing Sheila could become so important. He had not simply ended a marriage when he left Sheila. He had made a major decision because he believed Taylor was the woman with whom he could build a lasting future. Deacon clearly thought that choosing Taylor meant choosing a future together as husband and wife. And now Taylor has effectively told him that such a future may never happen. She still wants Deacon in her life, but she does not want the legal commitment that he clearly desires, and that difference could become impossible for him to ignore. Deacon may tell himself that being together is enough, but deep down, he could struggle with the feeling that he was willing to risk everything for Taylor while she is unwilling to take the same risk for him. The deeper that realization settles in, the more painful Taylor's rejection may become. And honestly, it is easy to understand why Deacon would feel wounded by this. If he believes that Taylor truly loves him, he may wonder why she would allow fear, family complications, or past experiences to stand between them and the commitment he wants. Taylor tried to explain that things might have been different if they were in their 20s, but Deacon could easily see that as an excuse rather than a genuine obstacle, because love does not suddenly become less meaningful simply because two people are older. He loves Taylor deeply, and at times it almost seems as though he loves her more intensely than she loves him. Taylor certainly wants to remain with him, but refusing to legally commit to their relationship could eventually leave Deacon questioning whether he is being offered the kind of love and certainty he deserves. In some ways, Taylor's behavior may remind viewers of the way Electra Forrester behaved with Will Spencer, constantly allowing family concerns and the needs of other people to come before the man she claimed to love, while Melissa Dillon was the one who consistently put Will first. Deacon appears to be doing exactly that with Taylor. He placed her above everything else and took enormous risks to make their relationship possible, even though divorcing Sheila could have cost him far more than just his marriage. He could have lost half of Il Giardino, and considering Sheila's unpredictable history, he could even have put his own life in danger by turning his back on her. Yet Taylor now appears to be placing her fears about Sheila, Steffi, and everyone else's reactions ahead of the love she shares with Deacon, and that imbalance could eventually become too painful for him to tolerate. There is another name that may be weighing heavily on Taylor's mind as well, Ridge Forrester. Taylor knows Ridge, and she knows exactly how complicated his reaction could be if he discovered that she and Deacon were engaged. Ridge and Steffi may both secretly be hoping that Taylor and Deacon eventually lose momentum and drift apart, so Taylor's refusal to marry him could be exactly the outcome they wanted. But the irony is that while Taylor is worrying about what everyone else might think, Deacon may be starting to compare her hesitation with Sheila's complete devotion to him. Sheila, for all her baggage and destructive history, would have jumped at the chance to make her marriage to Deacon permanent. That contrast could become increasingly difficult for Deacon to ignore now that Taylor has rejected the proposal he believed would change their lives. Sheila certainly made mistakes, and the biggest recent one involved keeping the truth about Luna Nozawa from Deacon. That deception damaged their relationship and gave Deacon a legitimate reason to feel betrayed, but it was not because Sheila had stopped loving him or because she wanted to hurt him. She was also trying to protect her granddaughter. And even when Sheila's choices were wrong, her feelings for Deacon remained incredibly powerful. She practically worshiped the man, and aside from Finn, Deacon was her entire world. That is what makes Taylor's rejection so striking, because Sheila was willing to give Deacon the commitment he wanted, even though she knew their relationship would always be complicated. The imbalance between Deacon and Taylor becomes even clearer when it is compared with Deacon's relationship with Sheila. When Deacon was married to Sheila, she loved him completely and unconditionally, and there seemed to be almost nothing she would not do for him. Even when Deacon told Sheila that he wanted Taylor, Sheila eventually made the painful decision to let him go because beneath all her jealousy and heartbreak, she wanted Deacon to be happy. She did not like his decision, and she initially begged him not to leave, even holding back the divorce papers while trying to negotiate for another chance. But eventually, Sheila signed those papers because Deacon had made his choice, and she respected what he wanted, even though it broke her heart. She did not spend every day trying to sabotage Deacon and Taylor, and that restraint could now make her devotion seem even more meaningful in Deacon's eyes. After Taylor rejected him, Deacon may begin experiencing something like buyer's remorse. On the surface, being with Taylor looks like the safer and more respectable choice, especially compared with being married to Sheila, the woman much of the town fears and treats as a pariah. Even Deke Sharp told his father that the staff at Il Giardino did not like Sheila, and Deacon knows there was plenty of baggage surrounding their marriage. Sheila absolutely should not have lied to him about Luna. But despite everything, she never deliberately set out to hurt Deacon, and she certainly never rejected his love in the way Taylor has now rejected his proposal. Those memories could begin replaying in Deacon's mind as he tries to understand how he ended up sacrificing a woman who wanted him completely for a woman who is unwilling to give him the commitment he wants. And then there is the timeline with Ridge, a detail that could make Taylor's explanation even harder for Deacon to accept. It was not long ago that Taylor herself was engaged to Ridge, and in fact, she was the one who proposed to him. In June 2025, Taylor asked Ridge to marry her, and she was only about a year younger than she is now when she confidently believed that marriage was worth pursuing. Yet now she is telling Deacon that they are too old to get engaged and that there is no need for them to marry. Deacon could easily look at that contradiction and wonder what has really changed. If Taylor was willing to propose to Ridge at nearly the same age, why is she suddenly convinced that marriage is unnecessary when the man standing in front of her is Deacon? The comparison becomes even more painful when Deacon remembers what happened next. Only a couple of months after Ridge accepted Taylor's proposal, he turned around and ended their relationship, leaving Taylor behind as he ran back to Brooke Logan. Deacon knows what Taylor went through because of Ridge, and he may be wondering why she is allowing the wounds from that experience to dictate what she can have with him. After all, Deacon would never intentionally treat her the way Ridge did when he abandoned her and ultimately married Brooke. Taylor should know that. Yet now, ironically, Taylor's refusal could push Deacon towards becoming the person she fears losing, because if she continues offering him a relationship without the commitment he wants, he may eventually decide that he cannot keep settling for less. That could be the turning point. Deacon may finally ask himself why he should accept a love that always leaves him waiting for more when another woman once saw him as her entire world. Taylor has placed herself on a pedestal in Deacon's mind, And he may have convinced himself that he is incredibly lucky simply to have her. He is completely smitten with her. And perhaps that has made him willing to overlook the ways in which their relationship is unequal. But eventually, even the deepest devotion has limits, especially when one person keeps giving everything while the other keeps holding something back. Deacon may finally begin to realize that loving Taylor does not mean he has to accept a relationship that leaves him emotionally unfulfilled. And that is where Sheila Carter could once again enter the picture. Sheila came with an enormous amount of baggage, and nobody could deny that being with her meant accepting a life filled with danger, secrets, and complicated family relationships. But Sheila adored Deacon in a way that was impossible to mistake, and she was willing to fight for him, sacrifice for him, and ultimately even let him go when she believed that was what would make him happy. Taylor, by contrast, seems to have a long list of priorities that she places ahead of Deacon, and the longer that continues, the more likely it becomes that Deacon will start questioning whether this relationship can truly give him what he needs. If Taylor remains in control of how far their relationship can go, Deacon may eventually decide that love without commitment is simply not enough. So now the question becomes, what happens when Sheila returns from Monte Carlo? There is enormous potential in seeing Deacon and Sheila sharing scenes again, especially after Deacon has just experienced the pain of Taylor rejecting his proposal. He may tell Sheila what happened, perhaps admitting that he got down on one knee and asked Taylor to marry him, only to hear her say no. Sheila would undoubtedly have complicated emotions about hearing that, because despite everything that happened between them, she still loves Deacon and once dreamed of spending the rest of her life with him. And if Deacon finally admits that he is questioning whether leaving Sheila was the right decision, the door could suddenly open to a reunion nobody expected. The most dramatic possibility of all is that Sheila simply looks at the man she never stopped loving and tells him to come back to her. For now, Taylor may believe that Deacon will accept her decision and that their relationship can continue exactly as it is, but she may be underestimating just how deeply this rejection has affected him. Deacon agreed to stay with her even after she said no, but that does not mean the hurt will simply disappear. The image of him on one knee, hopeful and vulnerable, followed by Taylor gently turning him down, could remain in his mind for a long time. And as he begins comparing what Taylor is offering with everything Sheila once gave him, the man who thought he had finally found his future may start wondering whether he walked away from the woman who would have chosen him without hesitation. If that realization takes hold, then Deacon's heartbreak could become the beginning of a completely different chapter, one that brings him dangerously close to Sheila once again. And if Sheila is waiting for that second chance, the next time Deacon comes running back, she may be more than ready to open the door. The more Deacon thinks about Taylor's rejection, the harder it may become for him to simply brush it aside and pretend that nothing has changed between them. He can tell Taylor that he understands. He can insist that their relationship is still strong, and he can even convince himself for a while that marriage was only a question of timing, but deep down, the wound is already there. Deacon did not get down on one knee because he wanted to test Taylor or casually see how she would respond. He proposed because he genuinely believed she was the woman with whom he wanted to spend the rest of his life. That makes her refusal far more painful than a simple disagreement about weddings, because it forces him to confront the possibility that they may not want the same future. And once that thought enters Deacon's mind, he may find himself replaying every decision that brought him to this point, especially the decision to walk away from Sheila. For Taylor, the situation may feel completely different because she has not told Deacon that she wants to lose him. In her mind, she may believe that refusing marriage is actually a way of protecting the relationship they already have. She fears that making everything official could bring unnecessary pressure, family conflict, and expectations that could eventually destroy the happiness they currently share. But Deacon may not see it that way at all because to him, marriage was never about changing their relationship. It was about confirming how deeply he feels about her. That difference in perspective could create a quiet, emotional distance between them, even while they continue spending time together. Taylor may believe she has reassured Deacon by telling him that she still loves him, while Deacon may be sitting there wondering why love alone apparently is not enough for her to take the same leap he was willing to take. And the longer Deacon sits with that contradiction, the more Sheila's memory could begin creeping back into his thoughts. He may remember how fiercely Sheila fought to keep him, how devastated she was when he told her that he wanted Taylor, and how difficult it was for her to accept that their marriage was ending. Sheila did not pretend that she was fine with losing him, and she certainly did not hide how much she loved him. Yet despite all of that pain, she eventually gave Deacon what he wanted and signed the divorce papers, allowing him to pursue the woman he believed was his future. Deacon could now look back on those moments with a completely different perspective, realizing that the woman he left behind had never questioned whether she wanted him. Sheila's love may have been complicated and sometimes destructive, but when it came to Deacon, there was never much doubt about where her heart stood. That could make Deacon increasingly uncomfortable with the pedestal he has placed Taylor on. He has spent so much time believing that Taylor is the perfect choice for him that he may have overlooked the fact that she is also capable of hurting him. He may have assumed that because Taylor is calmer and more accepted by the people around him, their relationship would automatically be healthier and more secure. But now he is discovering that peace does not necessarily equal fulfillment. With Sheila, there was chaos, but there was also certainty in the way she loved him. With Taylor, there may be stability, but Deacon is beginning to question whether he is receiving the same emotional commitment in return. That realization could be deeply unsettling because it forces him to admit that the supposedly safer choice may not necessarily be the happier one. Meanwhile, Sheila could be completely unaware of just how much her former husband is beginning to rethink his decision. She is away in Monte Carlo, separated from the immediate drama surrounding Deacon and Taylor, and she may believe that Deacon has moved on for good. She knows he chose Taylor, and she knows that he wanted their marriage to end. So Sheila may have convinced herself that there is nothing left for her to do. But if Deacon eventually comes to her and tells her that Taylor rejected his proposal, the dynamic between them could change instantly. Sheila would probably have every reason to protect herself from getting hurt again, yet the idea of Deacon returning to her could awaken feelings she never truly managed to bury. And that is when the question of whether Sheila would accept him back could become just as important as whether Deacon actually wants to return. Of course, Deacon would have to confront the reasons he left Sheila in the first place. He cannot simply erase everything that happened between them because Taylor refused to marry him. Sheila kept the truth about Luna from him, and that betrayal mattered, even if her motivation came from wanting to protect her granddaughter rather than intentionally hurting Deacon. There were also the constant dangers and complications that came with Sheila's life, and Deacon knew exactly what he was getting into when he married her. But Deacon also knew something else. Sheila loved him with extraordinary intensity. She did not see him as an option, a temporary partner, or somebody who could be placed behind family concerns. To Sheila, Deacon was central to her world, and perhaps that is the very thing Deacon is beginning to realize he misses most. Taylor, meanwhile, may not understand how serious the situation has become until it is too late. She could assume that because Deacon agreed to remain with her after the proposal was rejected, everything is settled. But there is a difference between accepting someone's answer and being emotionally satisfied with it. Deacon can respect Taylor's decision while still questioning whether he can live with it. Every time he sees her, he may remember that she does not want the future he wants. And every time he thinks about the sacrifices he made to be with her, that imbalance could become harder to ignore. Eventually, Taylor may notice that Deacon is quieter, more distant, or less eager to talk about the future. And by then, the problem may have already grown far beyond the proposal itself. The involvement of Ridge and Steffi could make everything even more complicated. If Taylor begins worrying about how they would react to a marriage, Deacon may wonder why their opinions matter so much when he is the man she claims to love. He could start feeling as though he is competing with an entire family for a place in Taylor's life, and that is not a competition he ever agreed to enter. Deacon has already accepted Taylor's complicated history with Ridge, her connection to Steffi, and the uncomfortable shadow of Sheila, but he may eventually decide that understanding Taylor's fears does not mean sacrificing his own needs. If Taylor keeps choosing everyone else's comfort over Deacon's happiness, he could reach a point where he asks himself whether he deserves someone who will finally put him first. And that question could lead him straight back to the woman who once did exactly that. There is also the painful irony that Taylor herself knows what it feels like to be rejected by the man she wanted to marry. Ridge accepted her proposal and then later abandoned her for Brooke, leaving Taylor devastated and humiliated. Deacon may remember that history and struggle to understand why Taylor is now repeating a different version of the same emotional pattern with him.